Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV, Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 6, that wonderful ABC show that we've been reviewing. We, of course, meaning me, Rob from Orlando, just west of Orlando, technically in the Pinos Palace, along with Professor Pixel, the professor of all things pixels. I guess he sees the world almost in a binary fashion, and while he's watching Twin Peaks, this is really getting his mind. And I got to sit there and say, Professor, for me, this episode, like I say, seems so far removed from how we first started with the death of Laura Palmer on that beachfront by the rock, wrapped up in a piece of plastic. But I got to sit there and say, this is one of the better episodes of the 6 in the second season, in my opinion, because of the way they've done things. I think they've found their footing a little bit with not only the case, but also some of these side plots. And I think the editing was a lot better this time. I've talked about it being choppy in a few episodes, but for me, this really worked out too. So I just want to hop right into the very first scene here because it all starts off with my boy Harold. And unfortunately, as some great writer once said, Dickens, I believe, that it was the best of times and the worst of times. It was the times when James and Maddie and all of them are going to really plot to overthrow Harold and take his special diary that he had of Laura, her secret diary, as it were. Because this guy, Harold, for some reason, I'm just popping every time he's on there with a soft voice. He's a decent looking guy, but as we left last episode, he had freaked out in a rather bad special effects scene, but cool scene. He takes that small little gardening hand rake and scratches his left side of his face, complete with blood and all that. We pick up right off that, him screaming, and he's yelling, and he's totally out of character about Donna, that you've lied, you've betrayed me like everybody else, just when I was going to go out to the real world, maybe. So Harold really flips and just goes apeshit. Of course, thankfully, we hadn't seen James in too long, but I'm going to give you this about James. Despite the fact that he's the guy I hate, he's really the only character I don't like. He's supposed to be a good guy. There's this whole love triangle thing with him and Maddie and Donna. It's not working for me. But they all basically run off. Harold still has the diary. And what did you take of this scene here? I loved it.
Yeah, no, and it really shows at the end whenever they all get out. I had to rewind because I wanted to make sure James was grabbing Donna's hand, because I thought for a second maybe that's Maddie. But no, it was James, and whenever they get outside, he's comforting her, and Maddie's just staring at them.
Staring daggers at him. She's pissy.
Mm-hmm. And then we cut to the screaming orchid man, and he's just shouting in his orchid room.
He's furiously watering, or perhaps even fertilizing, with that atomizer, the giant old school gardening one, in his orchid room while he's going apeshit. It's awesome television. I mean, you can't get better than this, really.
Oh yeah, it's. I definitely didn't know what was happening, but as soon as we get the screaming orchid man, we cut to the woods, and there's an owl, and that's when the second set of credits start rolling. That was the cool thing.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, good catch there.
Yep, because they wanted to basically highlight that scene. Then we get to our favorite character of the show. Audrey is being carried in by Cooper, and she's set on the bed. And she I wrote, it's not how she imagined him taking her to bed, but after that, she's calling for, I guess, her father. She's saying, "Daddy, Daddy," and the Cooper caresses her cheek as she's tormented within her own mind. But then she finally stirs enough to see him and say how she prayed for him before curling into his embrace.
Yeah, if anything, it almost seems like she's drawn to him more. And what I liked about this scene here is that we understand what's going on, but we can kind of be more emotionally involved in Harold and Maddie and the James gang and this whole diary business, because it's about Laura. It makes us think about her being dead. But the editing, like I say here, they allowed Harold to have his emotional release, and we're done with that. Now, when we cut back really quick, it doesn't seem like it's cutting in the middle of some action where we cut back and somebody's moving really fast or something's happening. You get this private little one-on-one conversation between Audrey and James about them, and
Donna.
I'm sorry, it's right, correct, Donna, and basically Donna's orgasmic when he starts making out with her. Frankly, I don't see what these two women see in him, but I guess he's the only available one. But like I say, the editing is good because we're not dwelling on anything. There's nothing cute so far in this episode because it cuts right into Cooper having a little conversation there with Truman about the Renault brother there, and it's interesting because, like I say, he's competent, but he's not without his own flaws. I'm not going to say his affection for Audrey it has brought him down, but he kind of beats himself over that everything here because he starts to realize a little bit later that he got played because, oh my God, they went to take me out. I've gone over the border twice here to One-Eyed Jack's out of my jurisdiction, and she was bait. So it doesn't immediately come to him what's bait. Now they're sharing coffee here, but they're not making a big deal out of it, but it's present. But the one thing I don't think I've ever commented on, the fashion angle usually elevates these episodes. And I talked about Big Ed's creamy, leathery, buttery jacket. It's phenomenal. But here, I forgot to mention about how Cooper, I'm a bit envious of him because he's got so much slick product in his hair. It's slicked back. I mean, he's 80s European retro fineness. And that's just one thing I haven't been able to mention so far him, because he's got the FBI outfit, which is just meh. But yeah, his slick back hair does him a world of good. But then he has the conversation with Ben. He brings the money back. And I got to tell you, Ben really thrives when somebody's trying to call him out in the business sense here. Because right now, the way Cooper's explaining, he's kind of letting him know that, hey, look, this is what's going on here. He doesn't say a lot of facts about how Blackie was killed and everything that goes on. He doesn't give, in other words, Ben all the details, but he's trying to like subtly let him know that, hey, I'm on to you, buddy. And of course, whatever's going to happen with Jean and other people that are left from that, we'll see what the fallout's going to be. But what's so great about Ben is he's so good at this. I'm almost respecting him, even though he's an evil capitalistic bastard, as some people might say, because he doesn't miss a beat, and he seems like he can totally think on his feet in these scenes. And there's another one later on that's like this. What did you make of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can just see the way from Cooper, how he's staring at him. It's like there's a hate in his eyes almost. I know that's hard to imagine from Cooper, but it looks like it. And then I don't know how to feel about where we go from here, though. Because
excellent, because it's a phenomenal scene. The next one.
Really?
You're talking the Leo scene?
Where Bobby's pushing Leo in. Leo looks completely brain dead. He's just staring forward. The lawyer there is praising them, saying how good it is for them to be taking care of him full time. And then he gives them their check, and it's only $700.
Yep.
And they're not happy. And Shelly's like, how am I supposed to do this? I have to quit my job to do this. You said there'd be profit in it, and there's really not. And it seems like Bobby's calming her down, but then Leo goes, oh, from his seat, and that spooks him.
Yeah, it's almost sounding like he's a baby where he just goes, It's kind of funny. But what's really tremendous about the scene here too is that we see Bobby and Shelley and the lawyer. If you think about it, Bobby and Shelley, we know, are scumbags. They're doing a really, really bad thing here. So they're paying the price for it, literally. And it's ironic because Leo's done some bad things too. He's paying the price for it. So now we're put in a position here where the lawyer almost seems like the good guy, pointing out how wholesome they're being and how everything's going, when normally we consider lawyers to be the sleaziest of everybody. And so it's really funny how all four of these here in a couple-minute scene, even though the lawyer exits early, and they kind of argue and fight a little bit about what's going on. They're getting their just desserts, as they will. They're not come up, and so it doesn't sound right, but you reap what you sow, and they're getting it. And it's just really great because we have not seen Leo in a long time. So we were left with the most recent vision of Leo being shot and basically not being effective, when we came to know him early on as the prime suspect and being a badass kind of guy, until another character later on showed up, who escapes me. The guy that came out of jail, is that Hank?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Which we haven't seen Hank since Jean put the gun up to his neck last episode. We get a brief scene here. We see Truman talking with Audrey about what's going on too, and he's basically saying, hey, I told you not to get involved, whatever, but at least she's sincere, and that's one thing I do like about her character. I've said before, the way to describe her is boring, but she seems like a decent woman. I mean, not necessarily with any flaws here too, but then we get the man himself. I'm gonna have to double check, but I believe David Lynch is playing this FBI person that has a hearing aid coming in and checking up on things, and he talks like this. He does a great job in here, and so this is kind of humorous, but he's coming in to check on everybody, give us some details. It's cool. It's really neat. It's fun.
Well, they added the hearing aid because that's how David Lynch just really talks, like this all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was fun seeing him. Cooper's super as he is. And he basically tells Harry how Albert's not returning, but there were vicuna coat fibers found.
Yes.
Trying to remember where. And how the one-armed man's drugs aren't anything normal. They're an odd concoction of his own. And Mr. Gerard himself is brought in.
Yes, I think that's obviously important for later in this episode here. But what you were talking about, the vicuna coat, remember how you had mentioned when he was doing his yoga, how the house cleaner sucked because that's when he saw the letter Audrey had left and it had dropped and fallen when he'd gotten shot under his bed. Well, we're going back. So this show does a good job of not necessarily being a rush and trying to overly talk things, to catch up when they have holes, but this seems deliberate and well paced because Albert was looking at stuff from when that happened, and he found the coat or some fibers from a vicuna type coat right outside his door there. So that was what was important about it. It's all going back to when he got shot at the end of episode 8 from season 1. And yeah, you're right. Hawk had rounded up the one-armed man and brought him in, which brings us to Audrey laying back down. And again, I just got to say, commenting wise on the editing, everything's just flowing so well here, especially if you're not watching this with commercials, so you can tell where the breaks would be. You can't tell here, and it's just great. But she kind of comes to, and her father Ben's there, and she doesn't want him to even touch her shoulder. She wants Cooper to take him home. So like we said before, she gets herself in these predicaments. She seems to really want to think on her feet a lot, and she's got contempt in here. She was a little aloof when we first saw her the first few episodes, but now she's like, So I kind of like this portrayal that she's giving of the character here too, because Ben, you could tell, could just give two shits about her, even though he says all and does all the right things. This guy's so slick. He's so evil. And she's kind of growing up here a little bit, even though she's crushing on Cooper. It almost seems like because of her ordeal, she's almost becoming a woman rather than getting laid, if that makes sense. It's not necessarily a sexual thing that's making her progress as a character. It's how she's getting herself into and out of situations without using her feminine instincts.
Absolutely. And this one has the fun angle of everybody disliking somebody. And yet them all ending up to the same conclusion, because Ben is saying how he's ready to take her home. And she says that she wants Agent Cooper to take her home instead. And Ben, he's standing there a moment, and he realizes he can't exactly fight what she wants without seeming almost suspicious. But he then suggests that they all go together. And that car ride must have been fun.
Yeah, I was wondering if anything was going to happen with that, if we would see it when the scene came up. But we get a very sexual scene as well, because that's really the theme of this episode. It's sex, but not point center. And it's a quick little scene here just to let us remind us that Nadine comes home and she's acting like, based off of what's happened to her, that she's still in high school. And she's like, oh, I can't wait. We can go up to the lake and park, and we can neck, which is the old school term for making out and getting down or whatever. And she's like, oh, we don't have to. We have the house to ourselves. And Ed just has no idea what the hell to do with himself.
Yeah, and there's a moment there where she says, we can do all kinds of stuff, and he's like, what kind of stuff? She's like, and she punches him. It was supposed to be playful, but he's in pain because Nadine is Superwoman over there.
Yeah, and we get what is perhaps in the next scene another sexually charged scene. Probably, I'm trying to think of the right word to say it there. Not seductive, it's not trampy, it's not trashy. Josie's laid out on a bed, and we see a man belting up his pants. Like he's just had relations, and she's in this long outfit. I want to say it's the same one that she screwed Cooper in, or I'm sorry, Truman in. And it just, the camera goes from her foot all the way up her body. It's very elegant, it's very classy, but you can tell this woman's a piece of work. What a piece of trash. She's screwing everybody, she's lying to everybody. This guy's basically saying, hey, here's the one-way ticket back to Hong Kong via Seattle, that you got to go tonight. If you don't, I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill Truman. So this guy is just, he doesn't seem very threatening to me, but he's supposed to be that way. But it's like, you can't screw around. You know what I mean?
It's funny. It's funny how you say that, because I took it a completely different way. I took it as Josie being forced upon, in a way.
Raped, perhaps?
Pretty much, but it's in her situation, she's accepting it.
She's allowing it to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's being screwed over by this guy completely.
Literally and figuratively. Yeah, this is Jonathan. This is a guy that came in that she was pregnant as an assistant, because basically he's supposed to say, hey, you need to get your ass back to Hong Kong where you belong. She's like, I've been here 5 years.
He's everything.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely. He threatens Harry, and she doesn't know what to do. And sadly, we go from this to a pretty sappy scene. But it does give us a good look into Maddie as a character, because she's sitting on a dock and James comes up, and he pretty much apologizes for
leading her on.
Yeah. And she says that basically he belongs with Donna, and he only cared about her in that moment because she looked like Laura, and she kind of liked that though. Because growing up, Laura was this presence out of the two of them. And now that Laura was gone, she was the new Laura in a way. But she recognizes that she's just her again, and says that she has to go home.
Yeah, like I say, at the beginning I knocked on Bob because I don't care for him at all, but he's supposed to be a good guy, and I arguably have almost no reason to do it. But I think it's just he's got that teenagery, shut up, stop whining face that I don't like. But for all intents and purposes, he's a good guy. He's part of the bunkhouse boys and everything too. I don't know. This scene I actually really liked. I liked his explanation about how he felt and everything you mentioned there too. But the scene itself is really neat because it plays the Twin Peaks theme there that we normally would start off with. And I don't know how that's relevant or not, or what, or we haven't heard that music part other than the theme. So, we've heard a couple different music pieces with some light scoring here and there. It's mostly tonal and stuff, which the music's phenomenal. But for some reason, it just stands out with the wind blowing. They're on a dock looking at a lake, which they have not been to before. We have not been shown this before. And even though you'd pointed out the second credits rolling, there's the blackish type of water running that we normally see in the main trailer, but it almost looks like it's running backwards. I don't know if it is or it isn't, honestly, but just this episode is very different for a lot of these reasons, but it's a beautiful scene where she's out looking at a boat and he's up there on his Harley. I thought she did an incredible acting job in here too. If you just watch like her eyes and everything, it really looks like an honest conversation between a young man and a young woman at that age where hormones are going crazy and stuff. So it may border on camp to some people if they especially don't like him. So I'm just trying to give him his due here. He's honestly not, so far it seems like a bad guy. Probably not a bad guy to have in a pinch like this you can rely on. And he just has two women chasing after him, and he's just kind of standoffish, which is in real life, it's what would make them both want him more. So it makes total perfect sense. He's not written badly. I can't argue about it. I just don't like him. He doesn't really have anything to him. But I agree with you. I think it's a noteworthy scene, and it makes me wonder. It looks like she's going away. Are we going to see her again? But after that scene, you get Josie and you get Ben, and she's basically saying, "Hey, I want my money," and he's like, "I don't got it." Because they were in when it comes to the mill getting burnt down, but they kind of have this little one-upmanship between them where he's like, "Well, I've got this dossier on you that would make people really interested," and she's like, "Well, I've got the same thing as well," and he actually is impressed. Because she called him out, and he's like, "Hey, it's a sign of good faith." He signs over the $5 million check that he got to help things out. And I don't know what kind of money she was supposed to be getting and all that details, but Ben, like I say, he's so in his element.
$5 million.
Yeah, Ben is in his element with the whole, business type thing here. He just lives for the stuff, and he really rises to the occasion in these scenes. But yeah, both not good people. Both not really caring about anything. The way Josie's been messing over Truman and Truman falling for it makes me don't like her, but she's obviously a big time liar, or at least he's keeping his mouth shut and doing dastardly things. So I think she's more evil than him, but they get plenty of time talking between these two. What did you think about the scene before we get to another great scene?
I thought it was just another great display of Ben, because at the end there, she's like, "Oh, the deal is, we're done. No, never again." And she's walking out, and he says, "Josie, well played." And it's he's in his element, absolutely. And then we get back to our favorite trio, the new trio. I mean, that being Leo, Bobby, and Shelley.
The handsomest couple in Twin Peaks. Am I wrong? They're beautiful. Yeah. Here's the thing with Shelley. She is just, even in today's terms, 2021, when we're recording this, such a beautiful woman. Gorgeous. Here she's gorgeous. She is just a natural beauty, top to bottom. She's looks somewhat petite here, maybe 20, I'm going to guess. Not ugly at all, but her character was always seeming, that pretty, innocent, naive young woman that made a mistake, maybe marrying somebody that just was like, the guy just a couple years older with a really cool car and a badass attitude, and she got caught up in it. That's what we're led to believe. But don't let her prettiness without sexiness get you in a trap, because here she's starting to act a little bit trampy. She's spreading her legs. They're drinking booze. They have him up because it's his birthday, and they're bad-mouthing him to him. He's got the stupid hat on. It looks like it's a dunce cap. He's got the kazoo in or whatever. I mean, and he's just sitting there, like you say, in the wheelchair. And they just do a really disgusting thing. They go to make out in front of her. She's got the beautiful stockings on, too, and the black bra, the see-through nightgown. And again, she's such a gorgeous woman. He's a good-looking dude. He's making out with her. She just turns to the other side. And all of a sudden, his head moves an inch or two. And he's got those old-school 80s Wayfarers on. You know that his brain is active. You just know it is because of the scene, but damn it, it is such a good scene. Man, this has been a great episode, and this was the perfect time to introduce it.
The funniest thing is after she gets spooked by Leah's head tilting almost,
Hmm.
Bobby pulls her off the table and he's like, okay, we went a little far. And he sets out a cake in front of him and he's saying, well, we'll go ahead, we'll have some cake. You like some cake? And he pats him on the shoulder and starts heading to grab silverware, and he just falls face first into the cake.
I know, right? Womp womp.
He didn't even mean to do that, but
Well, there comes a point where, like I say, there's a price to pay for your actions in the situation you're involved in. It doesn't mean you have to be contrite. Some people might consider this a potential religious description, if you were, loosely speaking, about man's nature, where you do something good, you get rewarded. You do something bad, you get rewarded. Maybe you do something good, but it's really not good or has bad outcomes. And to me, you're going, okay, at what point have they gone too far? You know, scamming him for his money. Okay, they're doing a really slimy thing. But then making out and trying to have sex on the table right in front of Leo, letting his head go in, you know that his brain's active, and at some point he's gonna be like, all right, I get it, but you went too far. And we'll see if that turns into something, but it almost has to be too.
yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was a great scene. It was perfect. If you know these characters really well, it works even more. We get another yelling scene, speaking up really loud, and at the police station there, with Cooper and Cooper's boss, Gordon, played by David Lynch himself, with yelling, and they go to talk. We get a little bit of backstory on Cooper about how he might have gone too far at a previous thing and all that. And to me, this was an okay scene. It didn't really do a lot for me too, other than, you know, we got an anonymous letter that Gordon was bringing him and hand delivering, and he opens it up, and it's the old P to K-4, which, since nobody plays chess, I'll quickly explain. It's the way you open, white starts. Of course, that means pawn to king 4. That's one of your pretty much two typical opening moves. The other one is pawn to queen 4. So obviously, if you know chess at all, it's the queen or king side opening. They have a tendency to be semi-open to open type, very violent, vicious games, versus the queen side opening. We'll see what that plays out, but I just wanted to throw that in there because it's still a little detail that actually is brand new and has been introduced. So what's your take?
Yeah, and they talk about how it seems to be from Wyndham Earl, which we've learned is Cooper's old partner who escaped from an asylum. So they're definitely going looking on that. But the funniest part of it is Lynch, Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
He as soon as Cooper walks in, he like snaps his fingers and points without even looking at him, and then turns his head, and he's happy to see Gordon. And when Gordon asks to speak in private, he's obviously yelling, and they can easily hear it out there. So Harry gets to enter the room, and he knocks and says, "Just so you know, we hear everything you're saying out there." But he's also in on the letter action.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, and we're going to have to wait and see how that goes. But we get to go from there to Leland. Leland's with Ben, and Ben is going on about needing Leland more than ever because he's in this deal with the Icelanders. But now Mr. Tajimura has an offer that looks to be far more intriguing. So they need to put off the Icelander deal. And Leland starts explaining all ways they could do that.
He does it such a smooth, confident manner too. It's great acting by this guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Ben actually says right then, "You're back." But I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great scene because Leland hasn't had a lot of screen time this episode. So
Yeah, he'll have a little bit more coming up here in a moment, but yeah, he's really good here too. And I don't know, I haven't researched it, but it seems that in a lot of scenes, Ben is smoking. I'm gonna guess they're Churchills because they're really long cigars. But I don't know. Maybe they're a torpedo or something because they don't look extremely fat. But he loves himself a good cigar when business talk's going on. That's just one of those things. I miss smoking in TV shows. I know it's not something a lot of people don't smoke as much as they used to, but there you go. We get probably the worst scene that is not really worth mentioning, other than Josie's getting ready to leave and Jonathan's there acting like the bag boy, and he plays the "I love you" card, with her a couple times, and she just goes to leave, and it's like I just go, this is where I'm just not like a Truman, because it's like I know that she's a bad woman, I know that he cares for her, and they've been going out for a while, and she's played the part of being a widow, which we think she has a nefarious end of how she became one. But it's like, you're a decent cop, and now I'm going, are you? Because he's soft spoken and all that too. But I guess it's just it's the strange Asian sensation sort of thing, or whatever that you get caught up in her too, because she has a very exotic sort of look. But he's just heartbroken when she walks out the door. She does the dramatic pause with her coat, doesn't turn around, and then just leaves. It's like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. But then we get Mr. Taji Moore, who's the guy that looks like the fake mustache wig and the fake makeup around the neck to make the person look older, the one that talks like this. That's Mr. Big. They're having a conversation, he and Ben, at the lodge there, about what's going on too. But I don't know where this is going. Don't know why I should care at this point, because I don't get this sense of doom. Because, okay, this Ghostwood project that they burned the mill down for, why do I care about it? Why do you care about it as a viewer? The only interesting thing here to me is that while they're having a conversation about stuff, he kind of gets a little, Ben does, distracted in business, because there you have Ben. He's singing, and we know he likes to sing.
Leland.
And he actually, or I keep getting him, I keep flipping him. Leland Palmer's there singing, and he actually has a decent voice. Yeah, and he's got the old school kind of Sinatra type mic. It's wired, not wireless. But he's not crazy like we saw him do with dancing and all that too. He's somebody that wants to communicate. It's very apparent that that's what it is, with nice piano playing. It's a neat little scene. It's in character with him, and I guess they use it as an excuse for while they're finishing it up there too. You see Taji Moore going up to the bar, sitting there, and we get Pete talking to him, and this wasn't too good either. Pete's trying to be nice to him, like wanting to buy him a sake or a beer or whatever, and I guess Toji Murray is supposed to be a jerk to him. It's whatever. I don't know.
Like musicals?
I mean, we like Pete, and I guess it's a scene for us to remember that he's still a character. He hasn't had a lot of screen time. Maybe he won't, but he's there and he's being Pete, so I don't mind him. But no, a pretty nothing segment, actually, considering this episode's been mostly good segments. What's your take?
Yeah, no, and I think it's actually necessary, because the next episode, sorry, not next episode, the next part shakes everything up again. Because
this is kind of a big deal, this next scene.
Yes, because the one-armed man, we get to see him with Cooper, Harry, and Gordon.
Clock is there too. Yep.
Yeah, and Mr. Gerard, he's saying how he needs his drug. He needs it, but Cooper says no. He can't have it. He has to find out what happens. And so, Mr. Gerard, after a moment, he throws his head back. He's screaming, and then he stops.
It's like he's having a seizure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's all suddenly calm, cool, collected, saying that he doesn't need medicine. He goes on to explain that his name is Mike, in inhabiting spirit. That Bob, how he was related to him, was Bob was his familiar. And he says a quick little rhyme like he's Dr. Seuss. He is Bob looking for fun. Everybody run.
Yeah.
But he goes on to explain the rules, basically. Bob needs a human host. And then starts quoting from the very first episode, The Dream, where we see Mike. And he's explaining about his friend, Bob. I have to take a second, and I recall we've obviously seen Bobby, but we haven't seen his friend Mike, which we thought were initially could have been related in some way to this, but it seems that they weren't.
It seems like they stopped running drugs. It's been a couple weeks, but because of Leo being
Yeah.
incapacitated now, maybe that's why. But that's an interesting point. I didn't really think about him, but yeah, you're right.
And so, getting back to what he's saying, he says, Mike says that he takes Gerard's body so that he can stop Bob, saying how Bob has been there for about 40 years in Twin Peaks. And they ask, do you know where he is? And he says something along the lines of, in a great wooden place where faces come and go all the time. And Dale deduces that Bob is at the Great Northern Hotel. And that's where the episode ends.
Yeah, Bob compares this familiar, what he's describing as familiar spirit, Mike, basically it looks like the person we're trying to find, maybe, but it sounds like it. He describes him as a parasite, like you said. Now, I really liked your description, rules. I don't really think of it that way, but it makes sense. I have to say this is an extremely well acted scene, considering we've only briefly considered a supernatural aspect. It's probably more of a pastoral type thing, the focus on nature with owls and trees and being outside and the wind and the storms and all that stuff. Although there's been a little bit with Hawk and the occasional comment about the force, going back a ways and weird things going on. But I have to say, the guy, and I believe he's a B-level actor, if you were, the guy that's played this character that's only showed up a few times, the one-armed man, Philip Gerard. It's supposed to be kind of funny because it's based off The Fugitive. If you watch that show from the 60s, which is tremendous Quinn Martin production, younger people watching this or getting involved may not know that. But the point is if you understand that, because you maybe you're an older listener or watcher of the show, it's kind of funny. It's like an inside joke. Oh, one-armed man, get it? It's like the whatever. But something sometimes as little as that can be disarming enough, because when this guy literally has his body taken over, yeah, it's disarming. When his body gets taken over by Mike, his voice changes, his acting's different. The guy delivers. It's another job well done by an actor that may not be whatever. He may have a great background. I honestly have not looked him up at all. I'm just telling you what I see. He doesn't come across as like a leading man or anything, and he's an older guy. He doesn't have anything remarkably physical about him. He looks like a one-armed shoe salesman, and that's beautiful casting. But it seems like he's saying, like you say, rules, but I feel like he's hinting at things that aren't there because some things haven't been really talked about. But yeah, this is a real big deal. And unfortunately, the only thing I've ever said to you, since you've not watched any of this, you don't know who or what the killer is. I've said before that, unfortunately, one of the biggest problems with the show when it first aired back in 1991 was David Lynch was adamant about not ever revealing the killer in Twin Peaks, because it's supposed to be a soap opera about what's happening with these characters and how things affect them. And that's it. It was just done his way. And I can see that now with all these characters we see, the angles. I love it. It's soapy. It's campy. It's great stuff. There's a little bit of supernatural, a little bit of dark stuff early on. But unfortunately, ABC said, no, we've got to show who the killer is. People need to know who. And that was a big bone of contention, because it sounds like they're getting pretty close to finding out who killed Laura Palmer. And at some point, when that's established, we'll see how the rest of the season goes, because we also have season 3, which got relaunched on Showtime a couple years ago, which you and I have not seen at all. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that. I've heard talks that potentially they might end up doing a season 4 if things are right, never say never sort of thing. And it's been 4 years since that came out, and it was extremely well received with a lot of characters from this original show. But I'm glad that we're emotionally invested in enough of the characters, whether we like them or hate them, where we've seen them change some roles a little bit. To me, I think of the whole Leo Shelley angle. Okay, she seemed like somebody we were supposed to feel sorry for. And we could almost understand her going out with a guy her age and all that because she's young and naive. Now they're doing a really disgusting thing, and we'll see what happens. But this is just a wonderful episode. It really feels like it's building up towards something. It's so good to me. It's one of the best episodes so far that we've seen in this second season. What's your take on this episode?
I absolutely agree. Just yesterday, I've watched so much great content, and this was just a part of that. I love the show. I really do. And watching it one episode a week can be killer sometimes, but it's so worth it because you get to that point where, okay, it's time to watch another episode of Twin Peaks. And due to a lot of streaming services now, you don't get that feeling a lot. And it's just great to take it how people would have taken it back when it came out.
Yeah, so let's go ahead right now as we close up. Let me ask you, so I can write this down. Do you know who you would pick if I asked you who killed Laura Palmer? You've seen, I mentioned that to you when we first started season 1. I said, once we get, a chunk of it, because we don't find out in season 1. I don't know if we find out in season 2, but right now, if you had to bet the mortgage, as it were, on it, give me a name of a person that you think would be it.
That's really difficult because we know that Bob needs a body to interact with the physical realm. So it's really a question of who Bob chose, in a sense. And I honestly don't know. If I had to guess,
that's what I'm asking.
I would, just with all the information that we have, like you said at the beginning of this, sometimes these episodes seem to pull away from Laura's murder, in a sense, as we learn more about her character, who she was. I have no idea.
Okay, I'm making you say a name just
You're
because.
Making me say a name. Okay,
yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious as you're thinking about it, because now we've got potentially 2 spirits, which makes it go, well, why not 3 or 4? And is this spirit lying? Is this really a spirit, which it's what it seems like it was supposed to be, or is this just a one-armed man pulling some fancy bullshit? Maybe he does have schizophrenia. I don't know. I just know that when you look at all these characters, it looks like it could be a lot of them. I mean, maybe I hate James because he really did kill her, even though he was supposedly, the last one was to see her and he loved her as the current boyfriend. I don't know. But we've had all these episodes to come up with a judgment. So right now, you got to have somebody in that slot. Based off of what? Based off all the information given to us, you've got to pull the trigger. It's not Harold. I don't think it's Harold, but that's me. It could be Harold. He was sweet on her and he's a weird dude. So I don't know. We've seen a lot more of him.
Yeah, no, if I had to guess, it would either be, I'm trying to remember what Bobby's alibi was that night, but I can't remember. It'd either be Bobby or Ronette. Because we know Ronette was involved with the situation because she was from the club One Eye Jacks. But both her and Laura disappeared. And I know they mentioned there was another man with them, but if it's a spirit, who knows? It could be that the spirit has enough of a presence in which, like, the log can sense it, because that's information we learned from, I believe, the log lady.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see more of her soon. She's not been around. Yeah. So Ronette is an interesting pick. I like where you're going with that. Actually, I didn't even really consider that too, but I believe she's still around at the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Huh. All right, so we'll put in Ronette for now, and we'll take a look at that for next episode and see what's going on. Yeah, Pixel, thanks for showing up as usual for this Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 6 review. Can't wait to do Season 2, Episode 7 of Twin Peaks next week. This is one of the more interactive shows as far as people really liking it and being a part of it, and I get a lot of Twitter activity from it too. I just think it's tremendous. I think, as we finish Season 2 and we go to do the movie, and then we go to do Season 3, we might try to do some cross promotion with some other fans of the show too, get some thoughts and theories about them, because that's one of the fun things about Twin Peaks, besides watching it, taking it all in, is when we come back and talk about it now, we come up with these ideas like, of all the times we've talked about the different things happening going on, I never once thought, oh, could Ronette be the killer? I just assumed no, because they were both falling together. But damn it, that's such an obvious choice, and it makes sense that I go, that's a legitimate pull there. So we'll see what happens. I'm assuming we haven't seen the last of her or others too. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 6 from the Xtreme Movie Show, Xtreme TV, tonight's episode, as it were. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme. Have a good night.